there's just something about a beautiful woman's face, just like Rio from Duran Duran's hit album. Great album, by the way. Um, Rio just stands out to me, even though she's sort of a cartoon and a figurehead to a song, as like, for me, just a beautiful woman. And that's sort of the theme of tonight's movie. Tonight's movie, we are looking at a woman's face. And I'm glad we're finally watching this. I have been recommended this movie, I think, once or twice in the past. This movie came out in 1941. And we've been watching a lot of George Cukor films, and let's just keep it going, I guess, because his movies are just so good. I mean, it's kind of annoying how everyone always thinks of Hitchcock, and George Cukor's just kind of left, or Victor Fleming, just like other directors are better well known than someone like George Cukor, but it's nice for us to bring these more out into the light for more people to talk about and to enjoy. So this movie actually wasn't the first adaptation of this story. There was a 1938 version with Ingrid Bergman that was filmed in Sweden, and something tells me that that version is probably really good. And I bet George Cukor watched that thinking, one day I would like to work with that beautiful woman Ingrid Bergman, because later they went on to make Gaslight, and I actually had some Gaslight. I felt some Gaslight vibes in this movie for sure. So, A Woman's Face came out, like I said, in 1941. It was an MGM picture. I would describe it as a drama, romance, very suspenseful thriller. I have read that Joan Crawford, who stars in this, wasn't first picked to be in this. Greta Garbo was rumored to have played the main character in this picture, but Joan just really wanted the role, and we'll talk about that when we get into the history towards the end of the video. So this is definitely a flashback movie. Like, basically the whole film is just one big flashback after flashback after flashback. Which I definitely think this movie could have been filmed linear without the flashbacks, but we'll talk about that at the end of the review. So Joan Crawford's in this. She plays Anna, the main character. A Woman's Face. The woman, of course, is Joan Crawford, Anna. Melvyn Douglas, who I really like. The more I see of Melvyn Douglas, the more I like him. I think we're going to start watching some more Melvyn Douglas pictures in this channel. He played Dr. Gustav. Melvyn Douglas is interesting because, he wasn't the best looking guy, but he has such a elegant way to him that you just really like the guy. He's a good leading actor. Someone like him probably would never be a leading actor in today's pictures, which is sad, but Melvyn Douglas is great. And Conrad Veidt, I think is how you say his name. It's Veidt or Veidt, but I'll say Veidt. He plays Torsten Baring, this rich, wealthy, or not exactly wealthy, but comes from a really wealthy family. Åsa Massen plays Vera, beautiful young lady who is cheating on her husband. We'll get to that, though. Reginald Owen, I like to note him, of course. And little Richard Nichols as the little cute boy in this. He plays Eric Lars. We'll just call him Eric in this review. So let's dive into it. So I think that the start of the movie certainly was confusing. It was a very slow start, in my opinion. I was kind of worried that this wasn't going to be that great for the first about 15 minutes because it was kind of slow. It's confusing because it starts with testimony. We're in court, and we learn that there's testimony going on about some case. We don't know what the crime is yet, but there's testimony from people who worked at a hotel in like the middle of the woods in Sweden, or maybe it was a different country at that point in the film. Maybe it was France or something like that. But they're in the middle of the woods in this real fancy resort hotel, and they work with Anna, played by Joan Crawford, and they're talking about her like, oh, we can't have mirrors, and just don't push her too much, and they're talking behind her back, and finally she walks in and she's like covering her face, and we quickly see that Anna is sort of a rude, bitter woman who hates the world. She's bitter to everyone around her that works with her. She's short-tempered. Note the mirror scene in the beginning where she doesn't want to look at herself in the mirror because she has burn marks on half of her face, hence a woman's face. But so she hates looking at herself in the mirror. She feels ugly. She longs for love, but she feels like she'll never find true love because of her face. And she just loses her cool. And it's kind of, whenever Joan Crawford loses her cool, she's almost too good at it. Maybe she was like that in real life. But so we learn that she is in love with a scoundrel played by Conrad Veidt. His character's name, again, is Torsten. And he's this piano player. He's sort of a playboy. You can get that playboy vibe from him. You get the sense that he doesn't really love her back, and he's just milking her. He's just using her to see. What I gathered was that he has affairs with wealthy women, and then she goes and she blackmails those women saying, if you don't give us this amount of money, then we're going to tell your husband. And that's where Åsa Massen comes into the scene, where she's Vera, because she's married to Melvyn Douglas's character, Dr. Gustav, because she had an affair with the scoundrel, with Torsten. And so they're blackmailing Joan Crawford. There's a scene where she goes in and she blackmails Vera, and basically says, give me this amount of money. And then Dr. Gustav comes home early, and she says, go hide. And so she hide, and she goes and she hides. But Dr. Gustav, he hears her. He goes up and he sees her, and he basically thinks that she's a thief. And this is when we truly see her face for the first time, more or less. Really crystal clear. And I want to note that up until this point, the George Cukor was so good at using shadows and hats and different clever ways to cover the side of her face, to not show her scars. And honestly, it sort of did have like this horror, scary picture feel to it, because you want to see the monster, but you can't see it just yet. So we see her face. She's badly burned, and she's really standoffish with the doctor. And Dr. Gustav says, look, I specialize in plastic surgery. I'm going to do this surgery on you. So she undergoes this surgery, and of course, she's just totally beautiful. She's Joan Crawford. And honestly, I think Joan Crawford was stunning in this picture. In a lot of other of her films, she has very heavy eyebrow makeup, those Joan Crawford eyebrows, or she'll just have such lavish gowns and her hair is done perfectly. But in this, she was more of just like a countryside girl. She wore plain clothes. Her hair was really thick and poofy and not too much makeup. And I thought that she just looked stunning in this film. Joan Crawford was really beautiful, and she was in her 30s at the time of making this. So she's beautiful, and you kind of feel a little bit of chemistry between she and Dr. Gustav. But then she goes back to her toxic love relationship. She goes back to talk to Torsten Barring, and he basically says, he's stunned by her face and says, look, I've loved you, since the beginning. I've always been in love with you before you were beautiful. So I want you to do something for me so I can get my inheritance. I want you to watch over my little nephew in Sweden, in the Alps or wherever, beautiful mountains, and snow, and I want you to watch over him, but then I want you to kill him so I can get all my father's inheritance. And it's awful how cruel that some people can be for money. So she hesitantly agrees to it. And honestly, this, like, from the point where she gets caught by Melvyn Douglas, has her surgery, like, this is when the movie starts getting so good. The first 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I thought was just slow and honestly unnecessary. Like the testimony from the workers at the hotel, I just thought it was very unnecessary. And not a good way to start out the picture that slow. So this is when it gets really good, is when she goes to this beautiful castle home or wherever in Sweden, and she's working for the head guy there, the consul, basically, for the father of Torsten. And he's a very kind man, generous man, and she meets little Eric, played by Richard Nichols, and he's just the sweetest little kid, and we're going to have a lot of fun together. I just know it. And, you know, saying sweet things like, hey, you forgot to give me a kiss goodnight. And you can see that she's already falling for this little boy, just kind of that motherly instinct. And you just know, how is she going to be able to go through with this plot to kill this cute little boy, this just innocent boy? And eventually, what's his name? Torsten. These names are so difficult in this review. This is probably the review with the most difficult names I've done. But Torsten, he comes back. He comes to see his father, and he's saying, yo, like, what's going on? You haven't killed him yet. This is the time. You're going to do it now. Now that I'm here, what I want you to do is I want you to go up on, like, the ski lifts, and I want you to undo the gate, and basically he'll fall out on his own, and it'll be an accident, and he'll fall into these horrible icy falls. And I don't know if it was a set. It couldn't have been a set, but the falls look so cold and dangerous. I'm pretty sure it was on location. And so that, I want to note that scene. It was just heart-pounding and nerve-wracking seeing her about to open the gate to let this little boy fall to his death. I feel like we've been seeing a lot of movies like with scenes like this lately, but this one was truly one to never forget. But Dr. Gustav shows up there. He's there too, and you just feel this chemistry between he and Anna, and he's sort of watching everything going on. In fact, in that scene, he does a totally Indiana Jones move, and like you'll just know what I'm talking about. He's risking his life in a crazy way to save the little boy, but of course she can't go through with it. But when she's at this location and her face has cleared up, she truly, her life is bright. She's a much happier person. And when Torsten comes, he is just it's like she's depressed again, her old life, this thing's pulling on her again. It's like a leech. So I'll then note the sled scene, the sleigh ride chase, which was awesome. Towards the end, when Torsten takes little Eric, and he's obviously going to kill him in some way, and Melvyn Douglas, Dr. Gustav, and Anna go chasing after him, and this scene was done in such a cool way. Like I don't know how they did it with such heavy cameras back then, but the chase scene is definitely one to remember. As my dad says, he said, "Oh, it's like Ben-Hur," and very cool scene. So I want to give this review, or give this movie a 3.5 stars. Very super close to a perfect 4. I don't give it a perfect 4 out of 4 because of that slow start that I keep talking about. They just could have taken out the testimony from those workers, and it would have just been fine. Perfect. And I also want to say that I think that this movie could have been better if it was just told in a linear way rather than flashback, present, flashback, present. This was before Gaslight came out. Gaslight was like just perfection, and it was like George Cukor was kind of working his way up to Gaslight. But this is close, very close to the Gaslight level. And also that relationship between Torsten and Anna was also very gaslighty. So you'll definitely think of Gaslight and like Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer, very similar, where he's just manipulating her like crazy. So I have some things to read from my Joan Crawford book. Quite a bit of things, actually. Joan had seen Ingrid Bergman in the Swedish film A Woman's Face, version of that. And the movie had been released in America in the fall of 1939, precisely when Ingrid arrived in the United States under contract to Selznick. And she had first appeared in Intermezzo, which we'll watch that one day. Quote, "I adore Ingrid and once wrote her a fan letter," said Joan. In fact, the letter was about a woman's face, which she not only admired, but which had deeply moved her and planted the seeds of an idea. The two actresses met at Selznick party for the premiere of Intermezzo, where Joan was able to turn the conversation to a woman's face. And she goes on to say that she basically asked Ingrid for permission to play the part, and Ingrid Bergman was like, of course, it's okay. So it goes on to talk about how there were a lot of younger actresses at this time, actresses coming up, like Lana Turner and Judy Garland, who easily could have gotten the role, but Joan Crawford just really wanted to fight for the role. Another reason for Joan settling on a woman's like really wanting a woman's face role, her face. She was entering a period of mature, almost statuesque beauty, but she was also afraid of being considered too old to be cast as a leading lady. In 1941, she would turn 35, and well-founded rumors were circulating that both Garbo and Shearer intended to quit the business permanently, which, yeah, happened. So she was worried about her aging and her still being able to be an actress. And so Joan approached her boss, poor Mr. Mayer, Joan wrote later, remembering the meeting at which she begged him to make a woman's face for her. He had borne with me as the bitch in the movie The Women, the bleak-looking woman in Strange Cargo, the mother of a subdead in Susan and God, and now he balked at me playing a scarred woman who hated the world. But George Cukor rose to her defense and agreed to direct the picture, and while Joan was away from California, Donald Ogden Stewart completed the screenplay. Ready on her return, the production proceeded smoothly and was completed in 2 months. Makeup artist Jack Dawn created a repellent scar and took hours to apply each day. From eye to mouth on the right side of my face, as Joan recalled, a hideous mass of seared tissue that was only seen for the first 47 minutes of the picture. Metro, afraid that too many people would wrongly regard a woman's face as a horror picture, released no photos or even hints of the character's disfigurement. Cukor's direction was, as usual, expert. And the author of this also makes a really great point, saying that Anna in this picture was such a deep character, which is true, because she was, quote, neither angel nor demon. She was a human, which is true. We all have flaws. No one's perfect. Quote, I have nothing but the best to say for a woman's face. Crawford told an interviewer many years later, it was a splendid script and George Cukor let me run with it. I finally shocked both the critics and the public into realizing the fact that I was at heart a dramatic actress. Great thanks to Melvyn Douglas. I think that he is one of the least appreciated actors on the screen that the screen has ever used. His sense of underplay, subordination, whatever you would call it, was always flawless. I say a prayer for Mr. Cukor, and every time I think of what a woman's face did for my career, it fortified me with a measure of self-confidence I thought I never had. Cukor said this about her: she played a disfigured monster of a woman who would not flinch from killing a child, and she did not soften it a bit. In the days before zoom lenses and advanced electronics, cameras often had to be mounted on a great cumbersome cranes, maneuvered by as many as 12 men, and close-ups might well require all this to be pushed from extreme long shots to within a few inches of an actor's face. Many found it difficult to overcome such understandable nervousness, and this juggernaut ground closer and closer. Not Joan Crawford. So Joan Crawford was amazing with close-up scenes, as we've seen in other films with her. So 3.5 stars, almost perfect. You guys have to watch this one. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll be back with another one next week.